Hello and welcome to the second video in this series on how to use Megascans atlases to create foliage, specifically inside of Speedtree and Cinema 4D, so that we can create a bunch of different variations procedurally. So if you haven't seen the first video on how to prep your meshes and your textures to be used inside of Speedtree, make sure you guys hop over and watch that before jumping into this video, because we are going to be using everything that we created in the first video in this video. So I'm going to go ahead and jump on in we're in Speedtree modeler right here. Now I'm using the Cinema Edition. However, you probably don't need the Cinema Edition. You can just use whatever, as long as you have Speedtree. So go ahead and open up a new project. So first off, you're just going to have nothing in here. I'm just going to kind of assume you have very limited to no knowledge of Speedtree here. So there's nothing in this scene. So we're going to have to create everything that we need. So we can just right click our scene right here, or we can go over to our little tree diagram. I don't really know what to call this. Our little area over here, and we're going to add geometry. Now we're going to be using, in this video specifically, our fronds and then our mesh fronds. That's what we're going to be using for our fern. So scrolling in and out, basically the navigation here is the same as Cinema 4D, but a little bit different. So middle mouse click, you can drag around and move like this. Just left clicking will just move you around, rotate around, and then left clicking obviously adds in our geometry and stuff. But if you went to move in and out, and just scroll wheel in and out will do that. So we're going to go ahead and click on our tree, and we want to make this circle be a little bit tighter so that our fern is all being kind of generated from one spot or very close to it. So click on the tree, and then we're going to go to our radius here, and we're going to set this to something like, go with 1, and we'll see what that gives us to start off with. So now we'll just go ahead and click on our mesh frond, and this is going to be the all the settings that we're going to be tweaking in here. But first, we want to set up so our frond here is actually the geometry that we created in the last video. So we want to go to our materials right here. We're going to set up our material first. So we're going to go and click on this little button right here, and we're going to add a material, and let's actually, we only need one. So we'll just name this fern and click OK. And then we want to drag in our textures. So click on that button, and I'm going to go to our directory with textures. So go to Megascans and then navigate to your texture folder. Now, if you didn't see the last video, you're just kind of jumping in here. You already know how to create your geometry. You do need to combine your albedo with the opacity map and make the opacity the alpha for your albedo. And that's what this texture is right here. So you won't have this texture by default. You have to actually go in and create that in something like After Effects or Photoshop or some other program, which you can do that. Personally, I've used both After Effects and Photoshop to do it. So that's what I know and that's what I use. But we're going to go ahead and drop in our albedo here. So open that up. And then our normal, we can just use that as well. And now we need to set up our meshes. So go over to the mesh tab right here, and we're going to add not one mesh, but 2 meshes, because I have 2 different ferns. So I'm going to use fern and then fern _1, and that will work just fine. So we have to drop in our geometry right here. So we're going to click on our tab right there, and I'm going to go to our folder that we had set up in the last video, and we'll go with fern, our first fern, and bring that in. Ooh, failed to load. Okay, it might be because it's FBX. I used OBJ in my last, so I'm just going to jump right in here back to our project that I had still open from last time, and I'm going to export our OBJs. So we can just export that out real quick and just disable these, and then export selected, and hopefully that will give us what we want. You can use FBX, but it's giving me trouble, so I'm just gonna re-export as OBJ. So now to get this as our actual fern here, we want to drag this onto our object right here. And you can see it's kind of big and not oriented correctly. So we want to go to Y up right-handed. So if you, let's say you start off like this, you import some geometry and it's kind of taking up your view. You can't see where you can only see, you know, like this. If you go to render and then you set up your wireframe, you can kind of zoom out and see just kind of how your geometry is oriented and what it kind of looks like. Normally when it's huge like this, that's because the orientation is wrong. So you have to reset your orientation to the correct way. So I'm just gonna set that back to realistic. Obviously it doesn't look too realistic right now, but we're gonna set up our second fern as well while we're here. So just drag down to the second fern and then open that one up as well and make sure that it is Y up. And let's just drag on and make sure it's the same. Looks like we're getting some sort of an error here. That could be due to our object. So if I jump back in here, might have an error. Yep, I didn't even notice it. It's this right here. That's not actually a triangle or a quad, so we need to fix that. Just make it a triangle and then we're good. So it's an n-gon, so obviously don't want those. I'm surprised I didn't pay any attention to that, but let's go ahead and export this again. And yes, we'll replace it. Now if I reload this, we're all good to go. And it is set up correctly just how we want it. So let's go ahead and drag our first fern back onto this, and we want to drag our material on here as well. So it's set up so that I guess the origin doesn't really matter, but the point needs to be brought down a little bit. And if I set this back to our other fern, drag that on, you're gonna see that it's all set up perfectly the way we wanted it as well. And if I hop back to the other one, whoops, if I can get it to go, there we go. And they're bent just how we want them as well. So let's go back to our generation tab there and click on our mesh frond. So we obviously want more of these, but we want our stems to line up with the ground plane as well. So we need to actually go into our tree, and for this one, I'm just gonna drop them all because I know later on we're going to need to actually have them sunk down a little bit to get them aligned correctly. So I'm gonna go to sync and just drag this down so that our stem is right there at the bottom. This is exactly how we want it. Let's jump back to our mesh frond here, and we want a few more, so we're gonna set it up in kind of in layers here. So let's set this to maybe like, let's go with like 5. And then I'm gonna set a plus or minus of maybe 2. That way when we randomize this, it will actually go anywhere from 3 to 5 to up to 7, I think. So we can just add a little bit more variation into our plants as well. Now we don't want them obviously all intertwined like this, and we want them to be kind of laying down as well. So we need to add a force in here. So we're gonna click on this little forces button and click add, and we're gonna use direction. Now direction just pointed down is kind of just like somewhat similar to gravity. So it's kind of why we're using that. And we can actually select that, and if we hit H, it will hide it, and because we don't really need to see it, it just needs to be there. Now if we go down to our forces here, you see if I drag this up and down, nothing's really happening right now, and it's enabled as well, so it should be affecting our geometry, but it's not. And that's because we actually need to they're just straight up and down. So it's basically just trying to pull them straight down, and it's not actually bending the geometry at all. So we need to go down to our spine here, and then we need to set this start angle. And as I drag this up or down, if I set this to negative, you can see how it's affecting the geometry now. So now our start angle, let's set it to something so that it's going to be nice and kind of pushed out. So they're kind of almost parallel to the ground, not really parallel, but kind of getting there. And now we'll just change the force back down, maybe add a little bit to it, maybe like a 0.08, kind of see what that gives us. Not really what we're looking for. I'm gonna add, a little bit lower of a starting angle, just to maybe. Yeah, we'll go with something like that. And we want to actually change our, let's add a plus or minus into this too. So let's put something like maybe a 0.8. Ooh, that was not good. What are we at? Yeah, we're at 0.3. So a point, let's go with like a point. I'll go 0.08. See how that affects it. Yeah, that's a little bit better. So now they're all kind of varied a little bit. And then we want to set our our length. So that's a pretty, we want these kind of be bigger. So plus or minus variation, let's go with like a 2. Just give us a nice little variation in the size. We want the bottom ones to be bigger because they kind of are alive for the longest. It's kind of the way that I think about it anyways. And let's go to, we want our generation, we want to set the offset a little bit so that it's kind of offsetting these. Let's get something good like 0.05, and let's set a variation of maybe like a 0.03, maybe a 0.08. Just give us a little bit more variation in there. And we want to have our fern kind of coming out of a closer angle. So it's gonna just change this last so it's kind of in there a little bit more. First is just gonna do the opposite there. And then we want our sync. This is why I kind of said we'll have to adjust this a little bit. So let's set our sync something like that, and then I want to go back to our tree, maybe bring this back up, and now we can adjust this further, bring that back out a little bit more, something like that. So now they're kind of all somewhat coming from the same spot, which is more what we want. Then set our sync back down to 0. I think that's gonna work for us. And then so we wanted to change, we can actually, if we want to kind of vary this up a little bit, we can just duplicate this. So hit Control C and then Control V, or not. It's not wanting to work. Control C, click off, and then Control V. There we go. So now if I open up this mesh frond, let's set this, maybe this frequency back down to like 2. And then if I set this one to like 2 as well, or maybe, and we want to change the offset here. Actually, let's change the, no, the sweep's not what we're looking for. The roll, there we go. That's kind of what I was looking for. Let's put some variation into that. So maybe like a 0.07, sorry. So now they're still the same, but if I go and drag our fern 2 onto this mesh frond right there, you can see that that's kind of varied up our mesh frond, which is exactly what we're looking to have. And you can just kind of change these as you see fit and set them to whatever different, if you have, if you set up all, I think there's maybe like 4 or 5 different mesh or different fronds in that single atlas texture, you can create a whole bunch of different variation here. But that's going to work for right now. So let's set up our second layer. So I'm just gonna copy the first one, and then let's set this frequency up to, actually let's keep it the same, but we want to set our starting angle down a little bit or up a little bit so that they're kind of raised up above these. And then we want to change our roll. Let's go with our roll something just so they're kind of offsetting each other. Let's go, let's really I'm kind of liking the way the offset's looking. Let's keep this maybe 0.42. Let's put some good variation in there. Let's go like 0.2, and then it's looking pretty decent. Now, the reason we're setting it all up like this with all these variation in here is because when we go to click randomize, if we just click kind of out of this, we have this randomize button right here. I'm not going to click it right now, but if you were to click it, it would randomize this entire fern kind of growth that we have going on here with all of these, you know, variations that we have and set here in mind. So we'll just keep on going along here. Let's create another one of, actually let's just duplicate this one because we have the angle and everything set. And then again, just drag our second frond onto there. And then we're gonna offset our roll something maybe like that. That's looking pretty decent. Let's actually maybe change up our start angle just a little bit. Let's go with like, I have it set to 0.2. Let's go like -0.2. Just to give us a little bit more variation in our second level here. And actually, I'm kind of liking that idea. So let's set this one to maybe -0.3. Just to give us a little variation in each, you know, little step as we go up here. So looking pretty decent as a fern here, but you kind of don't want to see, as you're looking down, all of that like stems all coming to one. So let's maybe go in with one more set of fronds and just set our start angle up to something else. Let's go, we're gonna really bring it up this time. Something like that. And we wanna, again, offset these more as well. And maybe let's maybe sink these in just a little bit more just to kind of close up that little gap. And I think that's looking pretty decent, giving us a nice little fern going on here. And then maybe let's go into our forces as well and kind of tweak these just a little bit more. Maybe add 0.13 and then put maybe like a 0.04 variation into that. And I'm just going to go and do that for all of these. Maybe set this point. See kind of how this is being affected. Kind of liking that, 0.15, and let's maybe put a 0.03. Take a look at these. Again, we want to kind of keep the gravity in there. So maybe 0.06 and a 0.02 variation. Because they're going to have some gravity pulling down on them. And then maybe put a 0.015 into that. So it's looking pretty good, I would say. Give us a nice little varied fern here with some different kind of growth to it. Now if I go back to this tree and maybe let's bring this up just a little bit. So yeah, maybe not. Maybe not. we're looking like some of our ferns are kind of in the ground, which is not what we want. Let's see if we can find those. Looks like it might be, which ones? Oh, it's looking like that's actually our, yeah, that's our second frond here. And let's go in and just add a little bit more variation in here. If I go to the frond, and you can change the height and the width of these. So as I drag these up, it's going to give us a nice bigger frond. It's going to stretch it a little bit, but give us a little bit more variation. Let's maybe go like 1, and then let's go like actually let's go to 0.9 and then give it a 0.1 variation. So it'll go all the way up to 1 and down to 0.8. It's not looking too bad. I'm thinking maybe we need to bring these up a little bit though. So let's go back to our spine here. Maybe set the start angle up to -3. I think I had the other one at -3 as well. So let's just try that. Maybe -3.1. It's kind of giving us a little bit better look. And then maybe this one, what's giving us ones under the ground. Where are those at? Is that still these? Might be. It is. Alright, we'll just say screw it then. Those can they're kind of hidden underneath the plant here anyways. So if I just kind of frame this up a little bit, give us a nice angle here. Looking pretty good. We'll frame this up, and then we can go to our file, and then we can save as, and then let's navigate on over to our folder, and we can set this up as a Speedtree file. So let's go with Megascans fern. Just click save, and now if I go to this folder, we have our Megascans fern file. So if I can just open this up, and it's going to open up another Speedtree thing here. And then I'll show you what I mean when I said you can randomize it, and it's going to keep those in mind. So again, just opens up right to what we had. And then now if I click randomize here, it's going to continuously randomize our object here and create all sorts of different variations, and you don't have to do really any work. Then you can go in and fine tweak these as well and export the different ferns the way that you want them as well. And did I set? I never actually messed with the frequency, so that was a mistake on my part. You can actually you actually don't want to set the variation to be as large as the frequency number, just because it's going to give you a possibility of having none show up. That's why you were seeing the the random odd one. Let's see if we can find one with with like this, unless that's something that you want, which is, that's all on you. If that's something that you're interested in, you can keep that. It does kind of give you a nice balance of completely randomness. So, but that's basically how you set up your different files and create a template so that you can use and just quickly go through and create a bunch of different random ferns for whatever project that you're working on, and create something super cool and not really have to do a whole lot of work to have something that's looking pretty decent. So if there's any questions that you guys have, hopefully I went over most of the things and didn't confuse anyone too bad. But if you have any questions, feel free to leave those in the comments, and I'll try to get back to you on those. Maybe I can do another video if it's something that's super confusing and we can focus on one little thing, something that someone's struggling with. So just let me know and we'll go from there. But hopefully this helped you out, and hopefully this will kind of speed up your workflow for creating any sort of outside nature scenes. But thank you guys for watching. I have a bunch more tutorials on different things for Cinema 4D and Redshift, different tips and tricks for those. So if it's something that you're interested in continuing to learn, please feel free to subscribe. Make sure you guys subscribe if you want to keep up with any new videos that are coming out. But thank you guys for watching, and have a good night.